Welcome back to part 2 of my 2025 ultra running predictions. Go watch part 1 if you haven't already. Apologies for being a few days late on this one. I actually completed the Arc of Attrition 100 here in the UK at the weekend, and the post-race exhaustion has led to an unproductive couple of days. We also saw Tom Evans debut for ASICS at the Arc 50, so my predictions from part 1 are already going terribly. Shout out to the one commenter who nailed that one. Let's hope some of these predictions prove to be better. Let me know what you think and any predictions of your own in the comments below. Let's jump into it. As I mentioned in part 1, I predict we'll see more carnage at the front end of races than we have in recent years, specifically at races like Western States where the competition will be fierce and everyone will be pushing their bodies and their nutrition to the limit. This year is looking like it will be one of the most competitive men's fields we've ever seen, with the current king of Western States, Jim Walmsley, having to defend his crown, potentially against the GOAT, Kilian Jornet, if he gets his golden ticket at Chianti, the guys who pushed him all the way last year, Rod Farvard and Hayden Hawks, plus 5 other returning top 10 finishers and the other golden ticket winners, including the man who's planning on shocking the world, David Roche. Now, David has openly said he's going after the course record, and I remember him stating after Javelina that if you don't go in the front pack these days, you've already lost. So it's safe to say he'll either be setting the pace at the front or running with the leaders from the start. We know Jim loves to front run, especially at States, so I can't see a scenario in which he lets David run off. I'm not certain what Kilian's tactics will be, but having won 2 of the most competitive sub-ultra trail races last year, he's going to be able to hang with whatever pace the leaders throw down. So I predict we'll see a front 3 of these 3, plus Rod and Hayden, who will be full of confidence after sticking with Jim for such a long time last year, and maybe a couple of other guys, all going off well under course record pace. I also predict that in an attempt to break each other, they'll all blow up one by one, and an athlete not in that front pack will be ready to pounce. Maybe someone like Dan Jones or Caleb Olsen, or if you want my very early pick for the win, Adam Peterman. Although, can you really call a former Western States winner an underdog? Well, I just think he's already being overlooked, and he always seems to be a footnote when I hear people discussing this year's stacked field. I'll explain my reasoning a bit more in depth when we get closer to the time in my race preview video, but basically my prediction is we'll see a lot of the big names blow up, and someone like Adam, who's able to run their own race, swoop in and take the win. My second Western States prediction is that we'll see the first ever Chinese winner. Now, if my first prediction comes to fruition and we see a lot of the top guys crumble, this could be returning top 10 finisher Shen Jiasheng, or someone like Yu Pei Quan, who will be golden ticket hunting at Black Canyon. But really what I'm predicting is that we'll see a Chinese winner of the women's race. Fu Zhaojiang's 2024 performance has kind of gone under the radar in terms of how fast her time was. With Katie's incredible sub-16 hour time grabbing all the headlines, you may not have noticed that Fu Zhao's 16 hours 20 minutes is comfortably the 3rd fastest time in Western States history, and is almost half an hour quicker than Ellie Greenwood's 2012 course record that stood for over a decade. With the only 2 women to have run faster, Courtney Dwalter and Katie Scheid, both giving the 2025 Western States a miss, this leaves Fu Zhao as the clear favourite in my opinion. One lady who was within a minute of Fu Zhao through Forest Hill last year, before some horrific blistering led to her withdrawal at Rucky Chucky, was fellow Chinese athlete Lin Shen. She's now looking to race her way back into Western States at Black Canyon, and if she's able to secure a ticket, then my chances of nailing this prediction double, as I think she'll be up there with Fu Zhao as one of the favourites, along with Esther Schilag. At this very early point in the year, I think the winner comes from one of those 3, with potentially Heather Jackson or Rachel Drake in the mix as well if they're able to build on last year's experience. Katie Scheid had an incredible 2024 with 3 career-defining performances at Canyons, Western States and UTMB, whilst Courtney Dwalter's 2023 season is the greatest season in ultra running history. These 2 incredible women are clear at the top, in a league of their own, and whilst it's fair to say Courtney still sits in the number 1 spot, Katie breaking her UTMB course record last year shows everyone that she's hot on Courtney's heels. Sadly, it looks like we're not going to see a head-to-head battle this year, but that doesn't mean we won't see the rivalry intensify, as they are both towing the start line of races where the other holds the course record. Katie is running Hard Rock, a race where Courtney has set the 3 fastest times. However, I don't think it's a controversial take to suggest that Courtney has never had a perfect performance at Hard Rock, and I think she's left time on the table, having watched Katie get an awful lot closer to Courtney's Western States record and then take her UTMB record in 2024, and seemingly getting better better year on year at the moment, I think there's a pretty good chance that Katie takes the hard rock course record. Courtney, on the other hand, is returning to UTMB, a race that she's won 3 times, including to round out that incredible treble in 2023. So what more does she need to achieve at this race? With that in mind, it's obvious to me that she's going back with only one goal in mind, to take back that course record. So yeah, my prediction is that Courtney and Katie will trade course records, and then there'll be even more intrigue by the time they hopefully face off head to head at some point down the line. With the Trail Running World Championships taking place in late September this year, the best long trail runners in the world are going to have to choose between UTMB and CCC or the World Championships, and although some may favour one of the UTMB races, it's still going to impact the depth of competition as plenty will be fully focused on the World Championships. One race that I don't think will be as affected is OCC, as those looking to compete at the short trail distance at the World Champs will see less issue with racing a 50k 4 weeks out, especially those like Remy Bonnet or Francesca Pupi who are used to regularly competing month on month in series such as Golden Trail. Add into the mix some of the long trail athletes who we'd usually see at UTMB or CCC, who may view a shorter race like OCC as a good tune-up before the World Championships. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of familiar names jumping into this one as a way to keep sponsors happy, considering most brands now use UTMB week as a trade show before then taking on the Long Trail World Championships. And that, in my opinion, will make OCC the most interesting race at UTMB week this year. So this one is more of a multi-year prediction, or a hope I suppose. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding UTMB in recent years, and although we haven't really seen it yet, we may start to see some athletes look at other options for their big European mountain adventures. And just to clarify, when I say some athletes, I'm really talking about the bigger recognisable names in our sport, athletes who you'd rank within the top 50 to 100 men and women in the world. Now, the World Trail Majors has a couple of options that have already attracted big names like Marianne Hogan and Germaine Grangier, but the race I'm thinking of actually has quite a few similarities with UTMB, like multiple race distances, all with large fields of between 500 to 1,000 runners, all finishing in the same town throughout race week, and that town itself being a key location at UTMB. I am of course talking about Tor de Géants race week, and more specifically Tot Dret. I mentioned Tor de Géants, based out of Courmayeur, Italy, in part 1, as one of the 200 plus mile races that has been getting more competitive in recent years, and that race is starting to attract quite a few big names. Tot Dret is the race I believe over the next few years could start to attract runners that would usually be looking at UTMB. As far as I can tell, it hasn't really taken off internationally yet. The results from previous years are littered with Italians, French and Spanish athletes who I'm sure are amazing, but don't quite fall into that internationally recognisable category. The race comes in at 130 kilometres, about 80 miles, so a bit shorter than UTMB, but with more elevation. 12,000 metres compared to 10,000 at UTMB, and a course record of a little over 23 hours, about 3.5 hours slower than UTMB. So it's fairly comparable, as with a little bit more world-class competition, you could see a couple of hours shaved off that course record. But it's really the whole package of Tour race week that I think could see it rise in popularity over the next few years. Brands could send full teams to compete over multiple race distances, the way they do at UTMB, and it's based out of a picturesque alpine town, so they could still roll out all of the same race week activation plans. Tor de Géants is already attracting big names, so it makes sense to me that their other races will follow, so keep an eye on Tot Dret over the next few years. I'll keep this brief as I don't follow the FKT scene all that closely, but I think we'll see another big FKT go down this year. After the attention Tara Dower's FKT on the Appalachian Trail received, and the lucrative ultra contract she rightly secured afterwards, I think we'll see others look to make some headlines or produce some incredible content chasing FKTs. It could be Tara again, maybe going after the PCT or the JMT. We've seen Tom Evans posting about his Bob Graham recce's, or maybe after Zach Miller and Adam Peterman's recent attempts, we'll finally see someone take down Jim Wormsley's rim to rim to rim record. And that's it for my 2025 predictions. Not long to go now before the season really kicks into gear at Black Canyon, and we'll start to see how 2025 may play out. Let me know what you think and any of your predictions in the comments below. Before I go, I wanted to quickly shout out a new podcast which is quickly becoming one of my favourites, Feet First, which interviews athletes at the front end of British trail running. The host Ed asks lots of clear and insightful questions. It's basically the British single track podcast, so go give that a listen. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'll be back soon with more ultra running content. Cheers.